Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gilded Arctis video, where I'm going to be using the Ludicolo and Shiftry lines to beat the game. These two version exclusives to Ruby and Sapphire, I think are going to do fairly well throughout the game. Now, I do know that the grass typing isn't incredible in this game, mostly offensively because it's not able to deal with a lot of the late game trainers. However, luckily Shiftry and Ludicolo both have secondary types that help supplement this issue by giving them some good water and dark type moves, which should hopefully help them in those problematic matchups. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to their stats and move pool. Starting with Lotad, it has 40 HP, 30 attack, 30 defense, 40 special attack, 50 special defense, and 30 speed, making it a very well-rounded Pokemon. Now moving over to its moves, and it gets actually quite a bit of type coverage with Ghost, Normal, Grass, Water, Dark, Ice, and Fighting, giving it a great amount of type coverage. Unfortunately, some of its best moves are on the TM side, and its level up moves aren't incredible, though Nature Power does have some places where it's incredibly strong, and of course Fake Out in doubles is always really nice, but I will have to go out of my way for a few TMs later on down the line. Now moving over to C-Dot, it has 40 HP, 40 attack, 50 defense, 30 special attack, 30 special defense, and 50 speed, making it an inversion of Lotad basically, with its special attack and special defense swapped for its attack and defense. Now moving over to its moves, and it unfortunately doesn't get a lot of type coverage through level up, getting only normal, dark, and psychic type moves, and there's no way I'm going all the way to level 49 for extra sensory, so I think the furthest I'll go is level 31 for feint attack, and so C-Dot will have to rely on its TM and tutor moves, of which it gets a decent type variety of Grass, Normal, Ghost, Fighting, Rock, and Flying, giving it a good amount of type coverage. And since it is the more physically leaning of the two, it can of course make better use of Body Slam, Brick Break, Shadow Ball, and even Rock Tomb if I really wanted to go out of my way for it. However, if things get too dire, there is of course Self-Destruct. Anyway, with that, let's go and move on to our Sudot in particular, which has a calm nature, raising its special defense but lowering its attack, which right away isn't a great nature for it, unfortunately. It has the chlorophyll ability, raising its speed in the sun, which could come in handy, and it starts with Bite, Harden, and Growth. Unfortunately, none of those are direct attacking moves. Anyway, now moving on to Lotad, it has a modest nature, raising its special attack and lowering its attack, which is a fantastic nature for it, and it gets a Rain Dish ability, which recovers HP in the rain, might come in handy in a few fights, and it starts with Astonish, Growl, and Absorb. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now something I neglected to mention is that Ludicolo is a stone evolution, and so is Shiftry, so I go ahead and pick up the Water Stone from this guy in Guardian Port, and soon after I teach the Bullet Seed TM to C-Dot, and then I run into another Lotad. Hello there, other Lotad. Goodbye, other Lotad. Anyway, after a little bit of training, I go into the battle against the old man, and right away I need to take down his Abra, so I go for Bullet Seed and Astonish into it. Unfortunately, Bullet Seed only hits 2 times and doesn't really deal that much damage, and Astonish isn't quite enough to finish it off. I go for another Astonish into Abra, but unfortunately it outspeeds and is able to freeze Lotad. I go for Bullet Seed into the Horsey, which does take it down in 3 Bullet Seeds. And then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Shroomish. I go for Astonish into Abra once again, hoping that I thaw out that turn. Fortunately, I don't. I am able to take it down with a Bullet Seed, and then all that's left is Shroomish, which finishes off my Lotad. And unfortunately, all I have is Bullet Seed to take down the Shroomish, so I'm going to have to resort to Growth in order to raise my special attack enough to where I can even deal a decent amount of damage to it. So, you know what, while I got this second, I may as well start a little bit of rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Now, even though the early game was a little bit slow for these two, with C-Dot not really having an attacking move until it gets Bullet Seed, and Lotad not being the strongest attacker yet, I do think it's going to start to snowball once we get some actual moves and these two start to evolve. Now, this battle is not indicative of the early game, because there are actually quite a few water types that C-Dot does very well against. Shroomish is just quite bulky. And had Lotad been here and not gotten so unlucky to be frozen, it definitely could have been able to use Astonish and get through this a little quicker. But anyway, with that, we beat the old man, and at level 13, C-Dot gets the move Nature Power, which I decide to teach over Bide, and then C-Dot evolves into Nuzleaf. And while normally I would go over the stat spread of this Pokemon, I am going to skip that for just a moment, and instead move over to the Blue Power Ranger today because I do super effective against all 3 of his Pokemon. So I'm able to take out his Horsey right away, then he sends out his Shadow Pokemon, which is a Spheal. Goldeen uses Tail Whip, but that doesn't really matter. Go for Absorb into it, not really dealing that much damage. Another Bullet Seed with a crit takes it down to low yellow, and I'm able to take it down with another Absorb, which just leaves the Goldeen left. So after one more Bullet Seed, I'm able to take it down, and with that we beat blue. Anyway, with that, soon after, Lotad evolves into Lombre, which is really going to help out a lot because Lotad was getting a little bit slow. So now moving on to Lombre's stats, it is 60 HP, 50 attack, 50 defense, 60 special attack, 70 special defense, and 50 speed, making it 20 points stronger in all of its stats. Which isn't incredible, but it's definitely going to be very noticeable in the next section of the game. But with that, let's go ahead and move on, and I decide to go ahead and fight the green trainer. That way I can go ahead and... oh, wait, hold on a second. Hello, Lotad. Goodbye, Lotad. So that I can capture this Seedot. On top of being a level higher than our Nuzleaf, which puts us that much closer to a move I want to get in a few levels, it just has a better starting moveset. So with that, I go ahead and take a little bit of time to purify it, and then we now look at our new Seedot, which has a Bashful nature, which is a neutral nature, but it's definitely better than the other one. It is Early Bird, which is completely useless, and it has Giga Drain, Refresh, Bullet Seed, and Secret Power, which is a much better learn set. So with that, we move on. At level 19, Lombre gets the move Fake Out, which I decide to teach over Growl, and then at level 21, Seedot gets the move Synthesis. So I can now evolve it into Nuzleaf, which has 70 HP, 70 attack, 40 defense, 60 special attack, 40 special defense, and 60 speed, making it quite a bit stronger, a bit bulkier, and also quite a bit faster. Now, one of the big things to note is that it is now a Dark type, which does give it another stab option on its future Dark type moves. However, the unfortunate thing is that Dark is a special attacking type in this game, so it's not really going to get the most out of it at being a physical attacker. And on top of that, Dark also gives it a 4 times weakness to Bug, which is only going to come up in a few fights, but it might be a bit of an issue. But anyway, moving on, I run into another Lotad. Hello there, other Lotad. Goodbye, other Lotad. And then I pick up this Carvanha for the Black Glasses item, which raises all Dark type damage by 10% before going into the battle against Lovrina. She leads with a Love-Disc and a Beautifly. And right away, I need to get rid of the Beautifly as soon as possible, so I go for Fake Out and Secret Power into it, which isn't quite enough to take it down, but it does deal a good amount of damage. And so I go for another Secret Power. Luckily I do outspeed and I'm able to take it down, and then she sends out her Roselia. Go for Nature Power, which is Swift in the Cypher base. Doesn't really do that much damage, but hopefully it puts Roselia in range to be taken down by Secret Power. Unfortunately, it isn't quite enough, and a second Swift also doesn't take it down, so it's able to go for Pin Missile, which luckily did not target Nuzleaf, otherwise it might have gone down in a single turn. Giga Drain is able to finish off the Love Disc, and then she sends out her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Delcatty, and Nature Power is able to take down the Roselia and deal just a little bit of chip damage to the Delcatty. I decide to go for Absorb, but I think Nature Power probably would have done more damage. But anyway, I go for Giga Drain, which takes it down to nearly half. Absorb gets a crit, taking it down to low red, and I run out of Giga Drain PP, which is kind of a real issue for Nuzleaf, though luckily Secret Power is able to finish it off, and we move on. And with Lovrina defeated, I now go ahead and evolve Lombre into Ludicolo. Now, in all fairness, I could have done this before the fight, and I think I probably would have if I needed to redo Lovrina a second time, but I wanted to give Lombre a chance to see how well it did. Anyway, with that, now that we have a Ludicolo, it has 80 HP, 70 attack, 70 defense, 90 special attack, 100 special defense, and 70 speed, giving it yet another 20-point boost to HP, attack, defense, and speed, but a 30-point boost to special attack and special defense, which is kind of interesting. But now it's much tankier on the special side, and it hits surprisingly hard. The 70 speed might be an issue, but honestly, that's probably good enough for this game. But anyway, of course, you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video with a Ludicolo without including the obligatory Mirror Bee, because this whole team revolves around Lombre and Ludicolo. Now, luckily, Nature Power actually becomes Shadow Ball in this cave, so it's quite effective against the other Lombre. Unfortunately, our Ludicolo didn't get Swift Swim, but it did get Rain Dish, so it is going to be healing whenever it does eventually get hit. Another Shadow Ball is able to take down one of the Lombre, and then he sends out yet another Lombre. And after a little bit of thought, I decided to not teach the move Torment to Nuzleaf, go for Giga Drain to finish off the other Lombre, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Voltorb. which is holding the magnet item, but unfortunately neither of my Pokemon actually learn electric type moves, so it's not all that important for this run, though it does match very well with Mirror B's aesthetic. Anyway, with that we finish off the Lombre, and we finish off the Voltorb and beat Mirror B. But he'll definitely be back later. Anyway, now over to the Railgun Tower where I go pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and I'm going to pick up a couple of those and teach Hidden Power to both of my Pokemon, after misclicking on the PDA. Anyway, our Nuzleaf has Hidden Power Water at 42 base power, which isn't incredibly strong, and I'm pretty sure Ludicolo already has water coverage covered, so I'm not sure how useful that'll end up being, and Ludicolo has Hidden Power Fighting, which is also at 42 base power. And even though Fighting isn't the best Hidden Power type, it's definitely better than Astonish at this point, so I go ahead and teach it over that, and we move on. Soon after, I run into another Nuzleaf. Hello there, other Nuzleaf. Goodbye, other Nuzleaf. And that's not the only important thing to happen during this fight, because at level 31, Nuzleaf gets the move Feint Attack, which I decide to teach over Hidden Power, and then after that, he sends out a Shadow Swinub, which is of course holding the Never Melt Ice item, raising Ice type damage by 10%, so I definitely want to catch that. And now that Nuzleaf is at level 31 and has the move Feint Attack, I decide to evolve it into a Shiftry. So with that, Shiftry has 90 HP, 100 attacks, 60 defense, 90 special attack, 60 special defense, and 80 speed, making it a little bit faster than Ludicolo, but actually just as strong on the special attacking side, with a little bit higher attack and a solid 90 HP. Unfortunately, its defenses aren't all that incredible at base 60, but they're still serviceable. Anyway, with that, we now move on, and I decide to go ahead and teach Body Slam over Secret Power, and then I go ahead and teach Ice Beam over Hidden Power before going into the battle against Snaddle. He leads with the Lantern and Quagsire, and right away I go for Giga Drain into the Lantern, which doesn't quite take it down in a single hit, and the same thing happens to Quagsire as well when Ludicolo goes for Absorb. So unfortunately it's able to attack back, though luckily no freeze. Strangely enough though, it's not actually going for Rock Tomb. I go for another Absorb to finish it off, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lunatone. I go for Ice Beam into it, which does nearly half of its health. I go for Giga Drain into Lunatone, hoping that it'll take it down in a single hit, and then I finish off the Lantern with an Absorb, which the Lunatone does go down, and then out comes Cast Form. Absorb is able to finish off the Lantern, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Metang. Now, between these two, the Metang is definitely the bigger threat, so I go for Feint Attack into it, dealing a ton of damage, taking it down below half, and Nature Power is Hydro Pump in here, so luckily it's able to hit, though I could have gone for Ice Beam to guarantee that it actually hit, and I'm pretty sure it would have taken it down, but it really doesn't matter. Go for Feint Attack into the Cast Form, and Ice Beam finishes it off, and we beat Snaddle on the first attempt. Now, of course, you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video starring Ludicolo without showing off the obligatory second Mirror B fight. Now, of course, he starts off this battle with his signature duo of Lombre, and I'm able to take down the first one before it's able to set up Rain Dance, so now I'll be able to outspeed them no matter what throughout the rest of this fight. A Feint Attack is nearly able to take down the second Lombre, and Nature Powers Earthquake in this area, so it's able to take down that Lombre and deal a decent amount of damage to the next one. Upon its defeat, he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Nosepass. I go for a Feint Attack to finish off that Lombre, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Ludicolo. Hello there, other Ludicolo. Nosepass gets taken down below half, so I know it'll go down the next turn, and I go for Feint Attack into the Ludicolo, which doesn't quite finish it off, but another Earthquake is able to finish up the job, and we beat Mirror B relatively easily. Well, it's always a pleasure to see you, Mirror B. Unfortunately, this is our last meeting. Anyway, with that, we move on to the battle against Gonzap, and he lives with the Nuzleaf. Hello there, other Nuzleaf, as well as an Electrode. Now, it goes for Fake Out right away, and because the Electrode isn't going to be doing very effective damage with Spark, it's just going to be using Sonic Boom, so it's actually not all that threatening in this fight, though I am still going to take it down anyway. In hindsight, should not have used a Feint Attack there. That should have been another Giga Drain, because I don't want to risk possibly getting paralyzed, though luckily I didn't. Anyway, the Nuzleaf starts using Hyper Beam. I go for Giga Drain into the Whiscash, taking it down in a single hit because it is 4 times effective, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Skarmory, and Ice Beam nearly takes it down in a single hit. I go for Feint Attack to finish it off, and goodbye, other Nuzleaf. Anyway, with that, we beat Gonzap on the first attempt. And with nothing in between, we move right along to the battle against Gorgon. He leads with the Lairon and a Celio, and right away I go for Giga Drain and Fake Out into the Celio. That way it's not able to attack if it survives this Giga Drain, which it doesn't. And then he sends out Slowking. I go for Feint Attack into the Slowking and Ice Beam into the Laron, and both of them are taken down below half health. The Laron is going for takedown because Ludicolo resists its Iron Tails, though Shiftry doesn't, so it could still be a nuisance later on down the line. But anyway, I take down the Slowking with a Feint Attack and then Ice Beam into the Ursaring, which actually gets a Lucky Freeze. So because it's frozen, I decide to go ahead and finish off the Laron, and then I'm going to attack the next Pokemon that comes out, which is his first Shadow Pokemon, a Shadow Primeape. And I go for Ice Beam into it, which takes it down to yellow. And at this point, because he's only got one Pokemon left, I decide to go ahead and finish off the Ursaring, and then he sends out his Shadow Hypno. Now surprisingly, Ludicolo actually outspeeds. I'm not actually sure if that's surprising, but I feel that Primeape is pretty fast. But anyway, I'm able to finish off the Hypno with a Swift Feint Attack combo, and with that we are going on to the final area of the game. And so far these two have been doing incredibly well, so let's see how they do on Cidadark Isle. So, now going into the battle against Labrina, she's with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis, and right away I go for Giga Drain into Gorbis, taking it down in a single hit. Then she sends out her next Pokemon, which is a Roselia, which gets taken down in a single turn, and then she sends out her next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Farfetch'd. Now, unfortunately, because I didn't take down the Gardevoir, it could have used a Track this turn, which could have been annoying, though luckily it decided to just go for Psychic, so I'm able to take it down with a Feint Attack, and then she sends out her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Altaria. I go for Ice Beam into the Farfetch'd to take it down right away, and then all that's left is that Altaria, which, to not waste time, I just go for Call and Ice Beam to take it down. So with that, Labrina, very easy. Now at the top of the volcano, I run into Snattle once again, and he leads with a Quagsire and a Metang this time. I go for Giga Drain to take down the Quagsire right away, and then he sends out Scizor. And I go for Ice Beam into the Scizor, not really doing too much damage, but I don't have a fantastic move for it. I go for an Ice Beam and Feint Attack, which is able to finish it off, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Solrock. Now, if I remember correctly, in hindsight, I could have gone for Nature Power, which I'm pretty sure is Rock Slide out here, though I'm not sure how much more damage that would have done to Scizor because it is very defensive. Anyway, I take down the Shadow Solrock in a single Feint Attack, and then I take down the Castform once it comes out with an Ice Beam, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Starmie. Right away, I go for Giga Drain and Absorb into it, which Giga Drain is able to take it down in a single hit, and then all that's left is that Metang, which goes down relatively quickly with a Feint Attack and Ice Beam combo. So I'm able to beat Snattle on the first attempt very easily, so now we move on to the battle against Ardos. He leads with a Shadow Swallow and Alakazam, and there's a very good chance that both of his Pokemon are going to outspeed me. The Shadow Swallow does and is able to set up Shadow Sky, and the Alakazam does and is able to use Psychic, though it doesn't do too much damage. He then sends out Kingdra, and I'm able to take down the Swallow with an Ice Beam, which then sends out Heracross, probably his most dangerous Pokemon because it has 4 times effective Mega Horn and 2 times effective Brick Break. So I need to get rid of it as soon as possible. I go for Body Slam and Ice Beam, which does take it down, and then he sends out Electabuzz, his next Shadow Pokemon. Kingdra goes for Ice Beam, dealing quite a bit of damage to Shiftry. Unfortunately, Kingdra still isn't the big a threat on the field, so I need to get rid of this Electabuzz as soon as possible. Go for Giga Drain, taking it down to almost half, and an Ice Beam is able to take it down, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Snorlax. Another Ice Beam from Kingdra takes Shiftry down to 65, and now I need to make a decision. Do I take down the Kingdra, or do I start attacking the Snorlax? And I think that taking down Kingdra is the better choice. I can get a little bit of HP from it, and on top of that, Snorlax isn't even guaranteed to hit. Unfortunately, it does, and it's able to take down Shiftry from half health. I decided to go with Nature Power because it turns into Rock Slide, and that has a 30% chance to flinch, which does give me a possible way at victory. Unfortunately, the first one doesn't flinch, but he does miss, and the second one doesn't flinch, but he hits. And Ludicolo also goes down from nearly half health, so with that, I decide to go back to Mount Battle to go pick up the Water Pulse TM. Not because it's especially helpful in this fight, but because I don't need the move Absorb anymore. But anyway, now 3 levels higher, on attempt number 8, I go back into the battle against Ardos. And even though it was very close on that first attempt, unfortunately, even leveling up once changed Swallow's attack pattern to using Shadow Half instead of Shadow Sky. And in most instances, this is actually pretty good because I can just Protect, but I didn't want to teach the move Protect because I wanted Ludicolo to have the move Fake Out for future fights, and I wanted Shiftry to have Synthesis so that I could heal towards the end of this fight to survive the Snorlax. And it's definitely helpful in the upcoming fights, but in hindsight, I really should have just taught Protect to at least Ludicolo. because the Shadow Swallow is consistently using Shadow Half. If I just weren't so stubborn, I probably could have gotten past this fight a lot quicker, but I just did not want to lose the move Fake Out. Anyway, with all that being said, on attempt number 8, we finally do make it back to the Shadow Snorlax, and in about the same state as I was in the previous attempt, I go for Rock Slide, hoping for a flinch. I don't get it. Shiftry is able to survive with just a little under half health, but the leftovers does bring Shiftry up to half, and so I'm able to use Synthesis to get all the way back up to full, and Body Slam finishes off Snorlax, beating Ardos on the 8th attempt. Not great, but it's alright. Anyway, we now move on to the battle against Gorgon once again. He leaves us Slowking and Ursaring, and because the Ursaring is going to protect, I decide to go ahead and go with Feint Attack in the Slowking and Rock Slide to finish off the Slowking, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is an Aggron. Now in hindsight, Rock Slide was not the best move because it can miss, but didn't end up mattering. Go for Water Pulse, which is especially useful against Gorgon, taking down Aggron in a single hit. And Brick Break does a decent amount of damage to Shiftry. I go for Giga Drain into the Walrein, getting a crit, taking it down in a single hit, which is very nice, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Poliwrath. And Nature Power, another Rock Slide, which unfortunately is not very effective against Poliwrath, though was against Walrein. Anyway, go for Ice Beam into the Ursaring to finish it off, and Giga Drain into the Poliwrath, which doesn't quite finish it off. It survives on just a sliver and is able to set up Shadow Sky, though luckily Shiftry absolutely outspeeds the Mr. Mime, takes it down with a single Feint Attack, and then all that's left is that Poliwrath, which goes down to an Ice Beam. So with that, we move on to the battle against Eldest. He leads with a Shadow, Manectric, and Ninjask, and unlike most instances, I'm actually going to opt to take down the Ninjask right away with Fake Out and Feint Attack, because its 4 times effective Silver Winds could take down Shiftry in a single hit, and it would deal a good amount of damage to Ludicolo as well. Now, unfortunately, because I left the Manectric alive, it does decide to go for Shadow Sky, which will make Salamence quite a bit stronger, though luckily it does just waste this turn going for Shadow Hold, and so I'm able to take it down in a single Ice Beam. But unfortunately, I wasn't quite able to finish off the Manectric, who hits the Shadow in, dealing well over half to Ludicolo, but that should be fine. Now, I decide to do something extremely risky and go for Feint Attack into Manectric, which could have paralyzed Shiftry, though luckily it didn't. I go for Ice Beam into the Flygon, taking it down in a single hit, and then he sends out his Shadow Marowak and Shadow Lapras. Now, hopefully the Marowak goes down in a single Ice Beam. Giga Drain takes Lapras down to half, and Ice Beam does take down the Marowak. So Lapras goes for Shadow Storm, dealing a little bit of damage to both. Luckily neither of them go down, and so I can finish off the Lapras with Giga Drain and beat Eldest on the first attempt. So with that, we go ahead and move on, and we go into the battle against the Scientist, who has a Shiftry. Hello there, other Shiftry. Goodbye, other Shiftry. And then I go into the battle against the Big Box Legendary, Shalologia, and right away I go for Fake Out and Feint Attack, which does a decent amount of damage, though unfortunately just a little less than half. Lugia outspeeds, hits a Shadow Blast, taking Shiftry nearly to half, and I'm able to take it down with an Ice Beam. So with that, now we move on to the final boss, Greevil. He leads with a Shadow Rhydon and Moltres, and right away I go for Water Pulse into the Moltres to see how much damage it does. Unfortunately, it outspeeds both of my Pokemon and is able to take down Shiftry, and Rhydon hits a Shadow in, dealing quite a bit of damage to Ludicolo. Water Pulse is able to finish off the Moltres and send out Executor, but unfortunately I don't get much further as Rhydon hits another Shadow Wind, finishing off Ludicolo. That's alright. Go back in for a second attempt now, and I go for Fake Out into the Moltres, that way it can't outspeed, and I go for Giga Drain to take down Rhydon because I just don't want it hitting a Shadow Wind, dealing a ton of damage. Then he sends out his Executor once again. I go for Feint Attack into it, and Moltres takes Shiftry nearly to half and unfortunately burns, though luckily Feint Attack is a special attacking move, so it doesn't get weakened by the burn and is able to take down Executor. With the extra Fake Out damage, Moltres now goes down to a single Water Pulse, and then out comes Articuno. I go for a Feint Attack and Ice Beam into the Articuno, which actually ends up doing a decent amount of damage, taking it down to yellow, and it luckily decided to waste this turn trying to set up Shadow Sky with the Shadow Tauros. So I might actually have a chance at victory here. I go for Feint Attack, which unfortunately leaves it on a sliver, and that critical hit Ice Beam would have been so useful against this final Pokemon, the Shadow Zapdos. It might have actually taken it down in a single hit, but unfortunately it just finishes off the Articuno. I go for Feint Attack into the Zapdos and another Ice Beam, which Zapdos actually goes down, and all that's left is Shadow Tauros, which goes for Shadow Rush. Luckily not into Shiftry. I'm able to outspeed and go for a Giga Drain, which takes it down to low yellow, and Ice Beam finishes it off. So now with Gravel defeated and the game beat, how well did these two do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 9 hours, 36 minutes, and 6 seconds, with Shiftry and Ludicolo both at level 60, with 9 feints throughout the game, 8 of those to bosses, and 1 of those to a random trainer. So I think it goes without saying, but these two are extremely consistent throughout a majority of the game, with no bosses really giving them any trouble other than Ardos. But I feel that's human error rather than their fault, because had I just Hot Protect over Synthesis and Fake Out, that fight would have been a lot easier. And while Gravel could have still been an issue, I think had I just dumped my rare candies into Ludicolo, it probably could have outsped and taken down Moltres in a single hit with Water Pulse anyway, so I don't think Fake Out was actually all that necessary, and I didn't even end up using Synthesis a single time after that Ardos fight, so I definitely could have gotten rid of that. But anyway, in this attempt, they find themselves near the top of the A tier, right behind a fellow grass type, Meganium. So I think that this pairing is quite strong, with Shiftry being able to outspeed most threats in the game and deal quite a bit of damage if not one-shotting things. However, in cases that it doesn't, I know Ludicolo has quite a few spread options with Nature Power, or just strong single-target moves like Water Pulse and Ice Beam to finish off threats. I think maybe in hindsight, going out of my way for Feint Attack might not have been the best idea, because Body Slam is probably doing about the same amount of damage because of that 10-point difference in its attack, and Shiftry is also just a much better Pokemon than Nuzleaf, so I'm not sure if it was really the correct decision, but it definitely gave Nuzleaf quite a bit of time to shine in this run. But anyway, if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!